Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My wife didn't want me to call it my channel. She wanted me to call it the channel. So we're going to do that this week. I hope everybody's having a great Saturday. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous to do this video this week. This channel is really important to me. The channel is really important to me. And the numbers that I'm going to go over this week are just so big that I was fearful that, people wouldn't believe it or people would begin to doubt the information. And I decided after thinking about it long and hard, I'm going to go through this stuff anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break down all of the calculations for how I did my math. So if you want to fact check any of the figures yourself, feel free. This week we're going to cover two extremely important topics when it comes to investing. First one being a concept called leverage. Second one being a concept called compounding interest. And what's going to be cool is I'm actually going to show how these will work in tandem. And with that, how we plan to make $9 million off of refinancing our house. Did you just say $9 million? I did. I said $9 million. Who are you kidding? You ain't going to be able to make $9 million. I promise you, check out the video. Check out and watch the rest of the video. You'll see how we make $9 million. All right, so for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Paul Novak, and I absolutely love saving, investing, spending, and talking about money, and that's what we're going to do today. We do financial education videos on Saturdays and portfolio reviews on Wednesdays. Hopefully you're learning something from these videos, and if you do, I would always encourage you, smash that like button and subscribe. Comments are always welcome, and we respond back to all comments. If you're interested in getting started saving or investing, I also have a ton of links down below for high yield savings accounts, for children brokerage accounts, other brokerage accounts, and with that you get a lot of free stuff, free stocks. So if you are interested in getting started, check that out. I do want to remind everybody I'm not affiliated with anybody. I only cover products in this channel that I personally use and support. Before we get started this week on the content, I'm going to talk about risk, and you're going to hear me talk about it multiple times throughout this video. With any time you're doing investing, there's always risk. That's where the money is to be gained. I will say that if you can find a risk-free investment that's going to make a bunch of money, let me know. My wife would be ecstatic. And I'm going to say, don't follow my lead on this one if you don't understand the concepts. We didn't make this decision lightly when I go through this. We're not just jumping in. We've done a lot of education and research, and because of that, we feel comfortable with this type of investment. All right, so before I go into the exciting part of how we plan to make $9 million, we're actually going to go through just a brief walkthrough of the concepts of leverage and compounding interest. So I'm going to start with leverage, and leverage is the borrowing of money or capital to increase the potential return on your investment. You hear the term leverage when it comes to investing, most commonly used in real estate. And that's what we're looking to do as we walk through this video. Part of the reason why I think leverage it's such a good opportunity right now is because interest rates are at an all-time low. So we're looking at refinancing our house where we did have a 15-year mortgage on it, and we're actually increasing it to a 30-year, and we're locking in our rate at 2.85. And here's where we hope, and I'm going to stress the word hope, this is where the risk is involved, where we plan on getting a higher return on that money than the 2.85% at which we're borrowing at, and that is leverage. And to do this, you're going to want to make sure, if this is something you're interested in, that you've got the highest credit score possible. And that's because you want the lowest interest rate you can possibly get. And if you haven't checked out our video on credit scores and how to boost credit scores, I'll post a link below. But that is something you're going to want to look into before you look at taking on additional debt. And then next, we want to get into compounding interest. So really, to keep it simple, compounding interest is where you make interest on your interest, right? So if your investments grow and you get an interest payment on it, that interest gets reinvested in the investment, and then the next time you get an interest payment, you're actually not just getting interest paid out on the principal, but also on the interest that investment's already made. And then it becomes wash, rinse, repeat, and the cycle just keeps on going. And that's what really allows you to start generating wealth and getting ahead. All right, so just to recap really briefly, right? The concept of leverage is where you're going to borrow money at a low interest rate with the hope of investing that money to achieve a higher rate. And compounding interest is nothing more than making interest on your principal and interest. So now let's get into the fun part. So we're going to talk about my specific investments. You don't need to remember all the numbers that I'm going over. When I do the calculations and walk through Excel for where we did the math and how we calculated this, you're going to see all that information. All right, so I'm going to start with the leverage part of it, and we're getting our leverage by refinancing our house. So our house was just appraised at $278,500, and we still owe $111,000. So we're taking out a loan, like I've already said in the video, it's going to be a 30-year loan. We're locked in at 2.85% interest. But when we take out that loan, we can't take out the loan fully against the house, right? When we take out the mortgage, we got to leave 20% in. So that's going to leave us roughly with a loan of $222,000. And it's just kind of funny how it works out that we still owe 111. So the split is almost 50-50. So when we actually sign up and close on the deal, we're going to get a check for $111,000. And that's the money that we're going to have to invest. All right, so now that we get that $111,000, I'm just going to look at a simple market average, the S&P 500. In doing my research over the last 20 years, it's netted annual returns of north of 14%. I think 14.48 or something like that. You'll see it when I go through the calculations. And over the last 5 years, it's actually north of 22%. So when I did the calculations, I stuck with the 14%. I think that's better to look at a 20-year average versus a 5-year average. And again, this is where the risk comes in, right? And I really want to stress that. So in my calculations, I am assuming that I'm going to be able to get the same returns over the next 30 years that the market's averaged out over the last 20. And nobody knows what the market's going to do. Anybody that tells you that they can predict the future and know what stocks are going to do or market averages is just not telling the truth. It's not possible. But I do feel very confident that the market's going to return more than 2.85% annually over the next 30 years. All right, so let's get into the actual example and the calculations, and I'm going to show you how we plan to make $9 million. It's pretty exciting. Let's do it. All right, so like I said, I just really wanted to cover all these calculations in Excel. I just think with these numbers being so large, I wanted to show where I did my math, how I got my calculations, because to me, $9 million is an insane figure. So as you can see here, I've got this basic template in Excel for calculating out your loans. It's already got some of the stuff defaulted in, which I need to switch. So I'm going to start here by my loan amount, and my house was appraised at $278,500. But if you remember correctly in the video, I stated I can't pull out a loan for that total amount. I got to keep 20% equity in the house. So what I'm going to do is show what my loan amount will be, and just like I stated, it comes out to like $222,000. My default interest rate was 4, but the actual interest rate we're going to have is 2.85, so I'll put that in. It's a 30-year loan, making payments once a month. And really, as I go over here, it shows my new payment is going to be $921 a month. And this I added in here, but my current mortgage is $1,050 a month. Now, I don't have any escrow built into this, right? I pay my own property taxes. I pay my own homeowner's insurance. So at the end of the day, this is what the loan amount will actually go to. And that difference comes out to $128. And that's going to be important because when I go over to the next slide, that's how much we're going to be investing monthly. Now, when I talk about risk, you can see here, even though I'm only borrowing $222,000, I'm going to have to pay back $331,000. So if I want to do this as a way to try and make money, I better darn sure make sure that I cover at least what those interest payments are going to be. And like I stated, that's where the risk comes in. So now when I go over to this other tab, this calculations tab, and some of the information I've already populated in here, but you can just see the results of the S&P 500. And I pulled where the point total was like in early 2001, because we're in 2021 early. And we were at 1,342 points roughly back then in 2001. And, you know, as of today, we're at 3,800 points for where we are now in 2021. So if you look at this 20-year gain, right, by taking these two numbers and dividing them, it says that we've made 289%, or better, the S&P has made 289% over 20 years. And then for this calculation, for average annual gains, I literally just took what that gain was, divided it by 20, as you can see here, and that gets me what the annual gains have been. So now as I go over here, present value, I'm going to put in negative $111,000. And as I stated earlier in the video, we still owe $111,000 on our house currently. So we've got to take that loan that we're borrowing, and we'll get to keep $111,000, but we also have to use that remainder to pay the loan back, right? So we don't get to take all of the money out that we're borrowing, at least in our situation. And our monthly payment is going to be negative $128. As I stated earlier, that's how much our mortgage is going to drop per month. So I'm assuming that I'm going to take all that money and invest it. And now I'm putting in negative numbers, and it'll make sense as I do the formula, but that's because I want you to think of this as you have that money today, but I'm going to give it away for the investment. It's going to leave my hands and go into the investment. That's why the number is negative. When we do it that way, the formula will actually spit out a positive number at the end for what that investment made. For annual APR, I'm literally just going to take that 20-year average and put that in here as the calculation. Now, I do need to break this down into a monthly APR in order to do this formula, because again, we're making monthly payments. So all I'm going to do is take this annual APR and divide it by 12. And that'll get us what the APR is per month. Now, we did take out a 30-year loan, so let's assume this money will be invested for 30 years. And I've got to get that broken down into months. So all I'm going to do is take 30 years times 12 months in a year, which kicks out 360 months. So now I'm going to let the formula do the compounding for me. So I'm going to click up here on this formulas bar and click on FV. That's the future values. That's the formula that actually calculates compounding interest. And for the rate, we're going to put in the monthly rate, and it gives an explanation in here. If you guys have questions as to what this means, and I'm going through too quick, you can always look at it for yourself. This NPER total number of payments throughout, so we're going to make 360 payments. The payment is going to be that $128 amount of what our loan has gone down. And then the present value of money, so we're assuming that we're going to take that $111,000 and also deposit it right out of the gates. And when I do that and click OK here, it's actually going to calculate, and it's showing right here at $9 million. So at the end of the day, assuming that we can get that same rate of return, which there's a lot of risk associated with that. There's no guarantees we're going to get 14.48%. But investing all of that money, we can use leverage and compounding interest to make an estimated $9 million. So that's how we calculated it, and that's where our figures came from. All right, so if you guys are interested in trying to pull this one off, I really think anybody can do this. If we can do it, heck, anybody can. But there are a couple things you're going to need. So one, which I've already talked about, you're going to have a good credit score to get the lowest interest rate possible. The lower that interest rate is, the less risk there is. And the other thing that we had that you might have, or you might have to work on building up towards, is you got to have equity in your house to pull from, right? If you don't have that equity and you can't borrow the money, you don't have it to invest, which is where that compounding interest really takes over. And the next thing, and probably the most critical thing, is discipline to stick with this investing strategy, right? If you're going to do this, you can't be disciplined for 6 months or for a year. You've got to stick this out all the way through the 30 years in order to see the maximized gains. All right, now to me, making $9 million is pretty exciting, but I'm not going to lie, this investment strategy is boring, right? You're taking all of that money and you're investing it in an S&P 500 market average ETF. When I say you've got to have discipline, it's because for a lot of people, that's not exciting enough when it comes to investing, right? There's so many people that I know that want the exciting thrill of investing where they want the next meme stock or buying Dogecoin or investing it in GameStop and turning your money 2 days later to double it up. This is my opinion. If you haven't learned already, I am a long-term investor. I'm not into these get-rich-quick schemes. And people that tell you that, hey, they invested in, we'll just pick on GameStop because that's a recent one, got in low and were able to sell out high and made a decent amount of money, odds are they're not telling you about the other 5 hot stock tips they got that they lost their butts on, right? To me, that's a heck of a lot more like gambling than it is investing. So I think investing and building a plan to get ahead is not that complicated. But if you really want to do it and do it well, it's not going to be exciting, right? It's building a stable plan. It's knowing what you're trying to accomplish and just having the discipline to stick with it. I think that's so important. And if you do that, I promise you, over the long run, you're going to be successful. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to compound investing. It's not about buying in, having a stock double in value overnight and trying to get your money out. So at the end of the day, I want you to let your money work for you, and that's what our game plan is to do here. Now for the big question. Are we actually going to do this once we get that check and close on our house? And I have to say, kind of. So I do promise you that all the money that we take out, the equity of our house, we're not going to spend any of that stuff on anything fun. We are going to invest it. But our game plan isn't to just stick it all in SPY. We're actually planning on starting up a new business where we're actually going to buy our first rental property. So I think we'll probably take, I don't know the exact numbers yet, but about $60,000 out of that equity and put that aside for buying rentals. And then yes, we do actually plan on taking the remaining $50,000 or whatever that comes out to be that's left and invest that into our Robinhood account. And for those of you who are interested in watching us do that or see the exact funds that we're buying when we do that, you can come check out our portfolio reviews on Wednesdays. I would assume we'll have those funds in the next week or two, so that'll be coming up pretty quick, which I'm excited to put that money in and see it start working for us. Now, I know the figure of $9 million. I keep saying that because to me, that's just crazy money. But seemed really nuts and seems like a high figure. But I'm hoping that as you've gone through this video, seen the calculations, understand leverage and compounding interest, it becomes a lot more easy to believe. And I do have to say, if we can do this, anybody can do this. And for me, with interest rates this low, if you're going to make a move, now's as good of a time as any to make a move. But again, it's got to be something that you feel comfortable doing. Don't just do it because some random guy on YouTube is telling you to do it. And as always, if you're interested in supporting that channel, smash that like button and subscribe. Comments are always welcome. We reply to all comments. If you're interested in starting to save or invest, I've got a lot of links down below for ways to get started. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you back here next week to talk about saving, investing, and spending money. Have a good weekend.